Dear Patriots, before the news starts, please subscribe to our patriotic channel by clicking the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up to this video. Don't forget to leave your opinion below in the comments section. Share the news on Facebook and Twitter so you friends see it. Thank you.
Tariffs on course to be imposed, Trump officials say. President Donald Trump remains on course to impose tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from around the world by the end of the week, despite threats that other countries will retaliate and Republican warnings the move could hurt the U.S. economy, senior U.S. officials said on Sunday. "I don't know exactly what day because the lawyers are working away, but sometime this week," Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross said on ABC's This Week. Both Ross and White House Trade Officer Peter Navarro, who appeared on several Sunday news shows, said they had no reason to believe that Trump would exclude allies such as Canada, the European Union, Japan and South Korea from the proposed 25% tariff on steel and 10% tariff on aluminum. As soon as he starts exempting countries, he has to raise the tariff on everybody else, Navarro said in a combative interview on Fox News Sunday. As soon as he exempts one country, his phone starts ringing from the heads of state of other countries. However, Navarro said there would be a process through which companies can ask for a particular steel or aluminum product to be exempted from tariffs if they cannot get it from a domestic producer. There will be an exemption procedure for particular cases, where we need to have exemptions, so that business can move forward. But, at this point in time, there will be no country exclusions, Navarro said on CNN's State of the Union. Trump is imposing the tariffs as a result of a 9-month investigation that found that current volumes of steel and aluminum imports are a threat to national security because they undermine the long-term viability of both industries. But most other nations see that as a thinly disguised excuse to take protectionist measures. His announcement that he planned to impose tariffs came amid a bitter fight inside the White House between officials who believe in free trade, as many Republicans do, and those who want to aggressively crack down on what they see as unfair practices. Despite the strong commentary from Navarro and Ross on Sunday, the free trade types inside the administration, led by National Economic Council Director Gary Cohn, hope they still have time to change Trump's mind, according to people close to them. The officials believe the White House will ultimately allow significant exemptions and will not impose the tariffs across the board. Cohn threatened to quit last week if Trump entered a full-scale trade war but did not view the president's brief remarks on Thursday as a final straw, according to a person familiar with his thinking. Cohn and some other officials at the National Economic Council and inside the Treasury Department, are continuing to make the case to Trump that blunt tariffs will damage the U.S. economy, tank the stock market and invite fierce retaliation from Europe, Mexico, Canada and other key U.S. allies. British Prime Minister Theresa May discussed the issue in a phone call with Trump on Sunday and raised our deep concern at the president's forthcoming announcement on steel and aluminum tariffs, noting that multilateral action was the only way to resolve the problem of global overcapacity in all parties' interests, a spokesperson for May's office said. The European Union has threatened to retaliate on €2.8 billion worth of American exports if Trump moves ahead with the steel and aluminum tariffs, targeting products such as bourbon made in the home state of Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Arkai, and Harley-Davidson motorcycles from the home state of House Speaker Paul Ryan, Republican Wisconsin. Trump upped the ante Saturday, threatening to raise tariffs on the EU's auto exports to the United States if it retaliates against steel and aluminum tariffs. The prospect of a transatlantic trade war prompted two senators on Sunday to caution that Moscow and Beijing would be the prime beneficiaries. The president's new enthusiasm for opening up a trade war with Europe is also a gift to Russia, which loves it when the United States and Europe start to split, Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat Connecticut, said on This Week. Senator Lindsey Graham, RSC, underscored that point, since the proposed tariffs would hit China relatively lightly, even though it is widely blamed for creating turmoil in global steel and aluminum markets by ramping up production over the past 20 years. "You're letting China off the hook. China wins when we fight with Europe," Graham said on CBS Face the Nation. Canada, which is a leading supplier of both steel and aluminum to the United States, has also threatened to take action if Trump curbs its exports. Many other countries, such as Mexico, are closely watching Trump and could follow the EU's lead. Ross brushed off that concern, saying any retaliation would barely make a dent in the $19 trillion U.S. economy. Sure, there may well be some sort of retaliation, but the amounts that they are talking about are also pretty trivial, Ross said. It's some $3 billion odd of goods that the Europeans have threatened to put something on. Well, in our sized economy, that's a tiny, tiny fraction of 1%. So, while it might affect an individual producer for a little while, overall it's not going to be much more than a rounding error. The Commerce Secretary also repeated the Trump administration's frustration with the difference between overall tariff levels in the United States and other countries around the world. Some of that disparity reflects the United States' willingness to open its markets to foreign goods in the years after World War II to help other countries recover from the ravages of the war. That may have been good policy at the time, Ross said, but not anymore. Concessions that were perfectly reasonable to Germany in 1945 or China in 1945 don't make sense anymore. Those are now very mature, big, strong economies, so there's a lot of history that needs to be undone, Ross said. Senior Republicans, such as Ryan and Senate Finance Committee Chairman Orrin Hatch, Republican Utah, have criticized Trump's plan, which they believe hits too many friends and allies, when China is really to blame for global excess capacity in the steel sector. Business Roundtable President and CEO Joshua Bolten, a chief of staff for former President George W. Bush, said on Fox News Sunday that the proposal was a huge mistake that would cause huge damage across broad sectors of the economy. But both Ross and Navarro said critics were exaggerating the potential negative impact of higher steel and aluminum prices on other industries that rely on the products, such as automakers and beer and soft drink companies. On an average car, $175 worth of steel increase is the maximum that would come from a 25% tariff increase. That's not much, Ross said. The combined cost of a 25% steel tariff and 10% aluminum tariff is about $9 billion in a year, Ross continued. That's a fraction of 1% of the economy. So, the notion that it would destroy a lot of jobs, raise prices, disrupt things, is wrong. Ben White contributed to this report. Condoleezza Rice-Tillerson has exceedingly difficult job in unusual administration. Former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice said Sunday that current top diplomat Rex Tillerson has a tough job, made more challenging by President Donald Trump's freewheeling communication style. I think what's hard is to get up every day and not know what the president said at 3 o'clock in the morning, Rice said on CNN's Fareed Zakaria GPS. That would be exceedingly difficult. Rice was one of the key voices in the foreign policy arena championing Tillerson when he was first nominated. And she said Sunday that the top diplomat, with whom Rice's consulting firm worked when he was chief executive of ExxonMobil, is doing his best in what Rice called an unusual administration. The pair recently spoke together at Stanford University, where Rice is a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution. I think that Rex Tillerson, in an unusual administration with an unusual president, who has never been in government before, is really doing a very good job on the diplomacy and is just putting his head down and going about that work, Rice said, crediting Tillerson for working to isolate North Korea and ensuring the U.S. maintains some diplomatic ties to Russia. Like others in the Republican establishment, Rice voiced concerns about then-candidate Trump and even called for him to withdraw after comments he made about women during a 2005 Access Hollywood taping became public. Despite their differences, Rice stressed that she respects Trump's office and that many of her former colleagues are now serving in the administration, though she acknowledged that some of what she hears out of the White House makes her uncomfortable. Do I like some of the language that comes out of this White House? No, Rice said. I do recognize that it is a different circumstance with social media with a president who has never been in government before. But we as Americans have to also respect our system, and I think our system is working quite well. GOP fears midterm backlash from Trump's tariffs. President Donald Trump's threatened trade war has opened a rift within the Republican Party that some lawmakers and strategists believe could undermine their effort to keep their majorities in Congress. Republicans plan to brag about the economy in midterm campaigns in hopes of countering Trump's unpopularity, touting a strong stock market, low unemployment rate and, most importantly, their increasingly popular tax legislation. But Trump's suggestion Saturday that he might slap penalties on European cars, in addition to the tariffs on aluminum and steel he already promised, could upend that strategy completely, Republicans say. Should the administration opt to move forward with tariffs on steel and aluminum, American manufacturers, businesses and consumers would be forced to bear the brunt, paying more for steel and steel products, said Senate Finance Chairman Orrin Hatch, Republican Utah, one of the primary authors of the tax overhaul that's central to the GOP's re-election effort. Such action could very well undercut the benefits of the pro-growth tax reform we fought to get on the books. It's a real simple frame for the midterm election. Republicans want to run on issues, said Douglas Holtz-Eakin, president of the American Action Forum and a former Congressional Budget Office director. This threatens that because it goes against our economic message. The clash suggests that what might be good politics for Trump personally might not work for the entire party. While narrow action directed at China alone might be well received, two top Republican congressional campaign sources said any border trade actions, such as what Trump is floating now, could be devastating. And it's also allowing Democrats to hug Trump just when Republicans have been trying to position the opposing party as detrimental to Trump's economy. Vulnerable Democratic incumbents from the Rust Belt have rushed to praise Trump for taking action that could help industries in their states. I like where the president is going on this, Senator Joe Manchin, D.W. Virginia, one of the most at-risk Democrats, said on CBS Face the Nation. Free trade hasn't worked well for West Virginia. The back and forth comes just days after Trump said he would slap a 25% tariff on imported steel and 10% on imported aluminum as soon as this week. Trump tweeted Friday that trade wars are good and easy to win. And by Saturday, Trump doubled down by threatening to retaliate against countries seeking to punish the U.S. for its protectionism. If the EU wants to further increase their already massive tariffs and barriers on U.S. companies doing business there, we will simply apply a tax on their cars which freely pour into the U.S., Trump tweeted Saturday. They make it impossible for our cars, and more, to sell there. Big trade imbalance. Trump's allies argue that the GOP's free traders misunderstand the politics of what Trump is doing. They say he is fighting cheap imports of aluminum and steel to boost domestic industries in the Midwest. On CNN's State of the Union on Sunday, Office of Trade and Manufacturing Policy Director Peter Navarro noted that just about every single Republican presidential candidate rejected Trump's trade agenda. Guess what? He beat them, Navarro boasted. Republicans are dead wrong on the economics, Navarro said. There's no downstream effect here. Most of the party flat out disagrees. Senator Mike Lee, Republican Utah, called Trump's proposed tariffs a huge job-killing tax hike. Senator Ben Sasse, Republican Nebraska, said it will kill American jobs. And even Trump allies Larry Kudlow, Arthur Laffer and Stephen Moore argued in a Saturday CNBC op-ed that even if tariffs save every one of the 140,000 or so steel jobs in America, it puts at risk 5 million manufacturing and related jobs in industries that use steel. Republicans have seen this movie before, and they know it ends poorly, said Holtz-Eakin, who worked in the George W. Bush administration. I was at the White House for steel tariffs, and in the end, there was a lot of retaliation against the U.S. In a recent interview with Politico, National Republican Senatorial Committee Chairman Cory Gardner, Republican Colorado, said that a majority plus believe that if Democrats get elected, the economy is going to get worse. House Republican leaders have similarly agreed that any path to keeping the majority relies completely on their ability to sell tax reforms a boon to the middle class and the economy. But a trade war, Republicans say, would complicate their central pitch to voters that the GOP is good for business and Democrats will tank the economy. Already, the EU has suggested it could retaliate against orange growers in the swing state of Florida, motorcycle maker Harley-Davidson in Wisconsin, and other industries that could hurt toss-up areas that Republicans need to win if they're going to keep the House and Senate. Just a terrible decision, advocated by Assistant to the President for Losing Elections Peter Navarro, tweeted conservative commentator Hugh Hewitt. Senator Lindsey Graham, RSC, appearing Sunday on CBS Face the Nation, listed several South Carolina industries that he said would suffer, including tire and car manufacturers. And he directed his message to Trump personally: "You're letting China off the hook and punishing the American consumer and our allies. You're making a huge mistake here." Many free trade Republicans are praying that Trump's top economic advisor Gary Cohn, who fought the tariffs and has been rumored to be eyeing the exits, doesn't leave and can quash the effort. Some are holding out hope that Trump will narrow his tariff push to China. Others think Trump could still change his mind, as he did last year, when he walked back a plan to pull out of NAFTA, and are trying to downplay his current threats. "I've stopped worrying and reacting to the day-to-day because you get all stressed out about something, then you realize tomorrow morning by lunch that it's never going to happen," said one top Republican trying to help protect the majority in the House. And now, Republicans know they're powerless to stop Trump. While they're relatively accustomed to a president whose views don't always align with their own, they don't usually panic because they can simply refuse to pass legislation to make most significant policy changes. On trade, however, Trump can do as he pleases, sends Congress. When it comes to trade, that's an executive power. "There's very little we can do," said a senior Republican aide who is alarmed at the Trump administration's trade policy.